Well, what is social dynamics? Basically, the basic idea is that you take data, you try to model it, and this data is about people and groups of people. And most of the research we do is in the context of cities. And one thing we do in general is to try to quantify things that are unquantifiable, that are intangible, and sometimes invisible. Right? We wanted to go so far to actually call our lab the Invisible Lab, but then they told me that that was too far, not that because we were sort of tangible and visible, right? But so the idea here is, for example, you take an image, right? And usually computer vision techniques would extract from an image an object, right? Is there a cat? Is there a person? And so on. So what we try to do is that to extract other concepts, like is the image beautiful? Is the image beautiful in a certain culture versus another? So those are concepts that are a bit subjective, a bit fuzzy, so they're very difficult to capture. And that's what we try to do, to quantify from images, from text, from interactions, these intangible things. Okay, so, well, Bell Labs now is part of Nokia, but has got a history. Some of you might know it was the birthplace of Unix, transistor, all this stuff, so there are a lot of crazy people around. And we have a new small lab in Cambridge, and there are different teams. Mine is social dynamics, is about data science. Then there is another one on pervasive computing, and the third one on new materials. And we are in social dynamics, there are three of us. So there is me, then there is Miriam, that does computer vision, and Luca more on social networks and text mining. So there are a few things that I will present today quite quickly. So sometimes I wonder before giving a talk, what's in it for you? Maybe there is nothing, right? So I'm going to lose 25 minutes of your time. But I think there are a few things that are interesting here. One thing is that if you come from different cities other than the ones that we present, then maybe you can sort of translate the thing we are doing in one city into your own city, which might be good. And then there are a few things that are still left in the idea box, which are called touchy maps and memories. And you will understand what I mean by touchy maps and memories. Okay, so let's start with the smart city rhetoric. Usually companies work for one, so I can badmouth companies. So usually the idea of smart city is quite specific, right? What is a smart city? It's a city that is smart, right? No, it's a city where, let's take the typical vision. When you go to work, you're always going to be on time. When you go shopping, there is no queue. And you know what? You feel really, really safe because of the CCTV cameras around you. Right? So it's about efficiency, it's about security. And we all know, right, these things are really important. But there is a difference between these things and other things. So you don't choose to live in a city because it's very safe. Those things are important and they make a city acceptable, but they don't make it great. Right? There are other things that make the city great, and we usually think about when we choose to live in a city. And usually those things are actually really difficult to quantify, right? So how do you quantify what makes you happy in a city? Really hard. And that's why we started a sort of counter-initiative to the Smart City Agenda, which is simply called goodcitylife.org. If you go on their website, you will see a few examples of projects, and you can subscribe to the newsletter. And the idea is that basically to do research on things that give a good life to people. As simple as that, right? So most of the research we do is based on social sciences, mainly on the 70s, right? So how many of you know who Jane Jacobs was? She was an urban sociologist, a pretty prominent one. Stanley Milgram, maybe more people, right? Because, yes, social psychologist, and Kevin Lynch, an urban planner. So all these guys have studied cities in different ways, and basically what we did is that we took their experiments, which were basically among undergrads, maximum 100 undergrads, and we transposed those experiments onto the web. So we have not been very creative, right? So we took their stuff in the 70s, 72, and we transposed them on the web. Okay, so two projects just to show you a couple of examples. One is about designing for urban beauty. All right. Do you know how Facebook started? Did you watch the social networking movie? All right, a few of you. Don't be shy. It's a pretty lightweight talk, so don't worry. I mean, it's not a true question. Great. So you know that I think at the beginning of the movie, you saw that Facebook started out of face mash. And what they were trying to do is to rank the top 10 hottest on campus at Harvard. So what they did is they built a website where you had to compare left and right, and then you would get a top 10 hottest for the week, I think, or for the day. That's how Facebook started. Fortunately, we didn't do face mash again, but what we did is we did a face mash for cities. So we built a game where we would ask people which one makes you happier between these two urban scenes, which are Google Street Views, right? Which one makes you happier? A, don't be shy, come on. B, okay, great. So I cherry picked them. So basically the idea here is that through this pairwise comparison, like face mash, you have a way of ranking pictures by beauty, by quietness, by happiness. You have a sort of way to understand where consensus emerges and where consensus doesn't emerge, and when that sort of property is subjective, right? So we built this game that is called urbancampus.org. It's still active, I think, but a few years. And we asked people which one do you find more beautiful, quiet, or happier. And then, like a face mash game, we could rank the picture by beauty, by quietness, and by happiness. As simple as that, right? Now, once you have for each Google Street View a score, a happy score, for example, a beauty score, then you can do all sorts of things, right, with algorithms. And one thing you can do is that you can look inside the picture. You can say, okay, what makes an image happy, right? Why do you consider it happy? Where consensus emerges. And what we found is the top two happiest urban images are Victorian red brick houses and gardens and greenery in general, right? So here it's quite interesting because the top two actually reflect two different dynamics, which is, one is very local, right? So if you were to run that in Italy, Victorian red brick house, you wouldn't find it, so it's very local and probably speaks to a certain status maybe. And but if you were to run the game in other cities and across the world, greenery would sort of be the universal thing that you would associate to happiness, right? So that's an interesting thing. But then you can also look at what are the visual cues that generally associated with the opposite concept of happiness. So basically negative correlations, right? What would you get? Traffic, yeah, cars, right. So, but the really good thing of that is that since you have a lot of data, then you can look at, okay, when you have cars, generally people don't consider that to be an happy scene in the city, but you can look at outliers. You can look when you have a car inside, and yet people consider to be still beautiful and to make them happy. What are those outliers? Well, cars are not always bad, especially when they are not cars. So basically, when they are parked out of the way of pedestrians and they're in small streets and they're not moving, and then they're totally fine. So, you know, I mean, this might be a sort of putting it as a joke, but if you've been in US and you know where parking lots are, so you would know that you generally have two buildings and a parking lot in the middle, and that's the worst thing you could possibly have in terms of urban planning, but we still plan cities like that. Okay, then the second worst element, apart from cars, crowds. Yeah, so here Google Street Views is actually taken very early in the morning. It's normalized by weather conditions, so that usually you don't see people right inside. So it could be a sort of crowd, but that kind of views don't give you crowds. Right? Factories, industries. Isolated buildings, right? So isolated buildings really make Londoners sad. Usually sort of isolated tall buildings of a certain kind, because again, you can look at outliers. You can look at when tall buildings are still makes people happy, and the two outliers are glass offices, which give London its unique identity, again a local result, and then the other thing was landmarks. And landmarks, so it's a sort of obvious universal choice, because landmarks are the way we do orienteering in the city, right? We do wayfinding, simple as that. Now, the really interesting stuff is that when we started this project, we were after something that we call aesthetic capital of a neighborhood, right? Aesthetic capital, just imagine that, so a neighborhood has got a financial capital, right? So the median income of a neighborhood could be a good proxy for financial capital. Then you have social capital, right? So the level of connection you might have with different stakeholders might represent your social capital. And then we thought, well, maybe there is aesthetic capital, right? So things that are beautiful, even neighborhood contain things that generally people associate with that place, maybe that's a sort of capital you can spend somehow. But actually, when you order in the paper, you have many more things that are positive and negative. But just take the four examples I gave you before, right? So cars and isolated buildings are negative, and public gardens and small streets are positive. What they have in common? They have in common one thing, and it's nothing to do with aesthetics and vision. It's more to do with the use of it. So basically, things and elements that hinder social interactions, they're actually negative. Things that actually promote potential for social interactions, they're actually positive. So the sort of receipt that you might think about as an architect and urban planner is, okay, so, or even if you are in the office and you want to increase the sort of social capital, is like, well, the good things in an office or in a city are things not that look beautiful, but they function as promoter of social interaction among people, right? So as simple as that. Now, there are, so these points, these images that show you, there are actually images with ratings, right? The ratings are not with faces, but just for easing the presentation, there are some images that are positive, some images that are negative, right? So what we do is basically we learn the patterns, right, out of those images, and we try to understand for an image that you don't have any rating, so you try to understand whether the image is beautiful or not, it makes people happy or not, right? And okay, fine, and then you can predict that's happy. Now, if you do that for several thousands of images, then you can sort of get this kind of map, right? And this kind of map, it's a map of the city where you have points that are happy, points that are less happy. And then what do you do with these points? Well, we are sort of geeks, right? So geeks, what they do with points? They connect them. So, and why is that useful? Because basically, in any point between A and B, if you actually connect really, if you ask a kid what would he do or what she would do, well, she would connect through sad points, or she would connect through happy points, right? And that's exactly what we did. So we built a new algorithm, a new app that, well, I was working at Yahoo Labs, where instead of giving you the shortest path, so if you were at UCL and you were to walk at Tate Modern, right, and you take out your Google Maps application on your phone, it's going to give you the shortest path, right? It's 20 minutes roughly, and that's the shortest path. Instead, we built a tool that automatically gives you the short path that is happier, beautiful, and quiet. So instead of walking 20 minutes, you just walk 22, and you have a totally different experience. So you should just think about, the research mostly gets into quantify these things that are a bit difficult and subjective and fuzzy to quantify. Now, we did different surveys and studies, one in Boston and one in London, and the recommended paths, of course, are considered quite more beautiful than the shortest path, and actually people don't differentiate in terms of walking time. So basically, I can't tell whether the happy path is longer than the shortest path, because really it's max 20% extra walking time in the algorithm, right? So it's pretty convenient, and it's not disrupting the experience of people. Okay, now so the idea here is that what we're trying to do is we're trying to quantify things that are related to sort of vision, right? What you find visually pleasurable. But there are other senses. You do have other senses, right? Other than your vision of weakness. So other than vision, you can have, for example, smell, right? Or you can have sound. And usually these things can be, also, well, hopefully, most of the time, they're positive, right? Because your life otherwise would be hell. So you can smell nice things, you can hear nice things. Of course, city life is also tough. You know, in Cambridge, not possible, in London, a bit more. You can smell things that are not very pleasurable, or you can hear things that might be pleasurable for a limited group of people, and not for residents, right? So there are other senses that we sort of, we were wondering, okay, how can we possibly quantify those things? Because those things actually in the surveys came out, right? When we did the Happy Path study, people would say, oh, but actually, I go on the street because before taking the tube, I actually wake up with the smell of the bakery shop next to me, so I take the parallel road. There was a girl synchronizing her running path in the morning with church bus, right? So all things like positive in terms of sound and smell, and yet if you look at the research, most of the research has been about quantifying negative stuff, right? So so smell is bad and sound is bad, and there is nothing that would capture the things that actually people would tell us. Okay, so the last example I will give you is about smell and designing for urban smell. One was about visual, pleasurable beauty, and happiness. This is about smell. Now, when I said to the people I collaborate with, we're gonna do smell, and they looked at me and they said, "Are you crazy? Just come back next week and tell us why we should do that." And I said, okay, well, the week after that, I talked to them and said, you know what? It turns out that smell is really important for you. So because humans can discriminate more than 1 trillion different kinds of smells. So 1 trillion is a bit of a big number. I mean, this number is sort of debated among olfactory researchers, but still is a big number, right? Are you not surprised? So if you look at your nose, it's a sort of big data machine. Right? So you should be surprised about your ability and you possibly expand your own well somehow. But okay, but if you look, so 1 trillion, just imagine it's like gigantic pie. And then imagine that in city plannings, what they do is that they quantify 10, 20 odors. And those odors are bad. Right? So imagine this gigantic pie, 1 trillion, 1 million, whatever you want, and then you have 10 odors that are quantified in terms of city planning, and that's how we do city plannings around smell. Why is that? Yes?
About the rubbish, about the waste?
Yeah, so it's about waste, it's about things that disturb people, right? And the point is that smell is really difficult to quantify and measure. So the only way to measure is that people complain about it. So the only technology that we have right now about capturing smells is people complaints. So, that's where we are, state of the art. So we thought, okay, we can do something better, and we can use people to actually go around and smell. So we organized smell walks. So we went around the world, and we asked people to smell stuff and report descriptors of smells, right? So urban smells. And we collected over a few years 380 plus descriptors of urban smell, right? So just imagine a list of words that are related to the smells. It's usually the origins of the smell, right? And we match these descriptors with Flickr picture tags, right? So you know, Flickr has got georeference pictures with points on the map, and then you have picture tags associated with it. So we take all the picture tags. London has got 1 billion of these picture tags, and then we filter the one that match the urban smell dictionary, right? The words. Then what do you do with words and with dictionaries? You can, for example, since you're a geek, or we are geeks, you can actually build the graph, right? You can put a bit of order inside this list of words. and you can look at the words that co-occur together. So once you look at this graph, you actually find out that words that are related to the same things are actually together, right? All the animals' words are together, all the nature words are together, and so on. And these sort of clustering exercise ended up with the creation of this first urban smell wheel, where you have basically, in the inner part you have the categories we found, so waste, emission, totally data-driven, cleaning, animals, metro, industry, nature, and then in the other part you have example words of our dictionary, right, coming from examples. Now the really interesting stuff is that you don't only have bad odors now, you can also quantify positive stuff, and you can celebrate smell for the first time. Now, of course, some people might say, okay, you're crazy because you're taking picture tags, and East London is going to be like crazy high because there are tons of hipsters there that take pictures on Instagram, right? So the point is that there is a huge geographic bias in there, right? So yeah, that's true. And so we work with the epidemiologists and we try to figure out whether what we found is actually correlating with, for example, nitrogen dioxide at the level of street segment. And it does. So when you have nitrogen dioxide, you have a lot of words belonging to the cluster of traffic emissions. When you have a negative correlation with nitrogen dioxide, you have a lot of words belonging to one cluster only, which is the nature cluster, right? So it sort of, on average, more or less it works in the way you would expect. Okay, so here you can't see that, but it's a map of London. There is a river in there. Can you see the river? Possibly. Yeah, it's so basically what we are trying to do in this video, we are trying to look for words belonging to specific categories, right? This was the nature category, right? And you can map the entire city of London with that. This is the food category, so you can map the foodscape of the entire city. So here the point I wanted to make is that since the state of the art is about complaining and people complaining about smell, now we can sort of celebrate the positive smells, and we can do that for the entire city. So it's scalable, but also it's replicable. Once you do for a city, you can replicate for other cities around the world. If you go on goodcitylife.org, you can interact with the map. So you can go and click on a street segment, and you can see the smell profile, right, on the right-hand corner, the bottom there. And then you can decide whether you still want to live wherever you live, or you have to leave. So, just the last thing, because I have a couple of minutes left. Of course, the other sense you might think about is urban sound. And urban sound is no better than urban smell because it's all about negative stuff. The only exception we found is this work from Soundscape that tries to sort of, in a qualitative way, try to describe the things that you might find in the city in terms of sound. But the good thing here is that there is a website where people upload snippets of sounds for free, and it's called Free Sound. So, and there you have so pieces of sound signals, but also you have like tags, right, associated with it. So with the tags, you can actually see, okay, what are the tags related to urban sound? You can build a taxonomy, you can match it with Flickr, like we did before, and you can start to build order in this list of words by looking at words that co-occur together, like we did before. You see the community structure, you do clustering algorithm. You find out that all the words that are related to each other, like music, they're all together, related to people, they're all together. And the result of that was the creation of the first sound wheel, urban sound. And it's about different things: music, indoor, transport, mechanical, human. And basically it does match, the total data-driven approach matches the work that people have done, all the researchers have done in the last 15 years by hand. All right, so that's basically how it looks like an image in Flickr. Let me just say, right. Then of course you can go a bit crazy. You can go in a crazy territory, and you can start to say, okay, very nice, because you quantify smell and sound and other stuff, but can you quantify other properties, like meta properties? Tend to be bright, vibrant, chaotic, monotonous, and so on. You can actually do that through surveys, right? Through surveys, you can actually get how people perceive the different kind of things, and you can map them into meta concept, like Is it an annoying street? Is it a calming street? And so on. So you can attach those properties, and that's what we did for sound, for example. You can see that the red stuff are the chaotic part of London, the green stuff are the calming part, and then the blue stuff you have exciting and monotonous. So you can sort of see this kind of meta concepts arising from the data, and you can also go into emotions. The same thing that we have done for sound and smell, you can do with emotions. You can quantify and look in picture tags of what kind of emotions are expressed, their georeference. You can also answer questions like, oh, what's the color of a smell? And based on the sort of correlations between co-occurrences between colors of in the pictures and the kind of smell you find in a picture, you can look at the statistical association, and you find that, for example, nature is green, right? But you also can find something else, like to a certain extent is also a bit brown. Right, so here, just to conclude, the idea is really simple, is to use basically existing social media data, in particular picture tags, but not only, to actually map the entire smellscape, soundscape, what you find visually pleasurable. And then the whole idea is that to have these layers not only for one city, but for multiple cities around the world, and then connect these layers to the well-being. So how these layers interact in the city and result into the well-being and happiness of people. That's exactly what we're trying to do. So if you're interested, just go on goodcitylife.org or just talk to us, and we will be happy to talk to you. Thank you.